What if the children you've seen never actually existed? That's not a conspiracy theory anymore. That's a question now whispering through royal corridors, echoed by palace aides, dissected on global forums, and, most shockingly, it's now being whispered by someone who was once considered Meghan Markle's most trusted ally, her own mother, Doria Ragland. Let that sink in. For years, we were told to believe a story that Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Lillibet Diana were born into a historic legacy, the first biracial children in the modern British monarchy. That Meghan and Harry were carving out a new narrative, one of independence and freedom from the archaic rules of Buckingham Palace. But what if all of that was a script? What if, behind the carefully curated photos, the staged documentaries, and the suspiciously private christenings, there was something far more unsettling going on? Something so shocking that even Doria, who had stayed quiet for over 5 years, couldn't hold it in anymore. And when she did speak, Meghan reportedly lost control of her body. Herself. That's how rattled she was. Now, this isn't some clickbait fantasy. We're talking about inconsistencies that have never been fully explained. Hospital records that don't add up, photographs that appear digitally manipulated, children who seem to age in reverse, and a royal family that treats them as though they don't exist. And here's the kicker. Doria was there. At Meghan's side. At the alleged birth. At the so-called christenings. At every step of the journey. She knew the truth from the beginning. And for reasons we'll explore tonight, she's now ready to crack. So why now? Why, after all this time, has Doria decided to whisper to someone what no one was supposed to know? Because the lie got too big. Because someone on the inside is threatening to leak everything. Because Meghan might be losing control of the narrative of her allies, and most terrifying of all, of the very secret that made her entire brand. This is not just tabloid fodder anymore. Something deeper, darker, and far more dangerous is brewing beneath the surface. And the cracks are beginning to show. Let's rewind the clock. In 2019, the world welcomed Archie Harrison with adoring curiosity. The first royal baby of color. Headlines gushed. Photos circulated. But something felt off. The couple refused to present their child in the traditional post-birth photo op on the hospital steps, a centuries-old royal tradition. Meghan cited privacy. Fine. Understandable. But then came the weird belly bump footage. Meghan's baby bump seemingly collapsing on live television as she bent to sit down. That clip went viral. Theories exploded. Moon bump, they called it. But surely that's absurd, right? Who would fake a pregnancy under that kind of scrutiny? And yet, the photos, the angles, the body shapes that changed weekly, the due date confusion, the birth certificate discrepancies, they all whispered a disturbing possibility. What if there was no baby at all? What if this was all an elaborate fabrication? For what purpose? To secure a stronger position in the royal family? To generate emotional sympathy? To lock in media contracts? To mask something darker? And then, boom, Netflix. Millions were made. The couple walked away from royal duties. Meghan held the children hostage from royal events. Never at Trooping the Color, never at Sandringham, never seen on the palace balcony. Archie and Lilibet became convenient props. Named in lawsuits. Mentioned in press statements. Shown in hazy silhouette in documentaries. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But never confirmed. Never held by a royal. Never seen up close. Not even once by William and Kate. Strange, isn't it? And through all of this, Doria remained a background figure. Quiet. Composed. The yoga-loving mother, always smiling, always saying nothing. Until now. Until she said just enough. To just the wrong person, at just the wrong time. That brings us to the moment Meghan reportedly wet herself. It happened in New York. At a gala event. The details are still under wraps, but multiple sources claim Meghan received a phone call from a close contact. That contact had just heard Doria, on a leaked voice note, admitting something shocking. Meghan collapsed in a back room, screamed at aides, refused to continue with her scheduled speech. And yes, that happened. Not metaphorically. She physically lost control. That's how devastating the contents of Doria's leak were. And now, we have to ask, what exactly did Doria say? Why did she say it? And what does this mean for Archie and Lilibet? Because if those children aren't who we were told they are, or if they don't even exist in the way we were led to believe, then this isn't just a royal scandal. It's a global betrayal. It means books, interviews, documentaries, charities, lawsuits, legal testimonies, and even royal succession lines were based on a lie. A royal fraud, possibly the biggest one since Wallace Simpson. And now, it's Doria's words that may be the first thread to unravel the whole tapestry. So why does this matter now? Because Meghan and Harry have built a brand, a multi-million-dollar brand, around their roles as parents, as survivors, as underdog victims of royal cruelty. Their kids aren't just family. They're assets. They're shields. They're currency. Every time criticism intensifies, Meghan evokes motherhood. I'm a mom. I just want peace. I'm protecting my children. I wake up every day wondering if they're safe. But what if there's no one to protect? What if Archie and Lilibet aren't real in the way we were led to believe? What if Doria, in her moment of weakness or guilt or perhaps justice, finally confirmed what so many have speculated all along? Tonight, we'll explore the mysterious inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancies, the shocking audio leak of Doria's confession, the moments Harry slipped up in interviews, and what he accidentally revealed, the missing christenings, the fake bump footage, the weird Netflix home videos, why the royal family has never publicly acknowledged Archie or Lilibet in any official capacity, and most of all, what happens next if the world learns the truth. Because let's be honest, Meghan has always been the architect of her own narrative. But if that narrative was built on a phantom foundation, the entire empire may be seconds away from collapse. And Doria? She might be the woman who lit the match. So buckle in. Because what starts as a whisper in the hills of Montecito is about to explode into a full-blown firestorm across the world stage. This isn't just another royal scandal. This is the scandal they never wanted you to think was possible. But the truth? The truth doesn't care about NDAs, designer dresses, Netflix contracts, or curated Instagram feeds. The truth finds a way. And it always starts with the quietest person in the room, finally speaking up. But what made Doria break? And more importantly, who heard her confession first? Because that person, they didn't just record it. They made a copy. And now, that recording is moving through hands faster than Meghan's PR team can shut them down. But what's on that recording? What does it reveal? And why is Meghan absolutely terrified that it will leak? Stay with us. Because the moment that recording hits the surface, the entire world will finally see what the royal family may have known all along. And what happens after that? Well, that's where our story truly begins. What happens when the quietest person in the room finally speaks? That's the question that rattled Meghan Markle's inner circle the moment whispers began circulating that Doria Ragland, the woman who had mastered the art of silence, had started talking. Not to the press, not on camera, not in some dramatic tell-all interview, but in fragments, in half-sentences, in moments that were never meant to travel beyond the room. And those moments, they spread anyway. Here's the thing about silence. When it lasts long enough, people stop questioning it. They assume it's loyalty, or dignity, or wisdom. But sometimes, silence isn't calm. Sometimes it's pressure. And pressure always finds a release. So ask yourself this. Why did Doria stay quiet for so long? And why now? Because for years, Doria Ragland occupied a very specific role in the Meghan narrative. She was presented as the grounding force, the calm, centered mother, the yoga instructor who didn't chase the spotlight, the one family member Meghan could point to and say, "See, not everyone from my past is a problem." And to be fair, Doria played that role perfectly. She attended the royal wedding without drama. She smiled politely beside royalty. She avoided interviews. She didn't contradict Meghan publicly, not once. When the world turned hostile, when tabloid headlines grew vicious, when royal watchers began asking uncomfortable questions, Doria said nothing. Nothing at all. But silence, when examined closely, can mean many things. Was it loyalty? Fear? A legal agreement? Or something heavier? Something that required constant self-control? Because behind closed doors, according to multiple insiders who claim proximity to the situation, Doria was never just a passive observer. She wasn't simply watching events unfold. She was present, involved, informed. Sometimes, allegedly, she was the only person Meghan truly trusted. And that's what makes the recent whispers so destabilizing. It wasn't a press leak. It wasn't a paparazzi shot. It wasn't even a disgruntled staffer. It was a conversation. A casual one. The kind people have when they believe no one is listening. Picture it. A quiet setting. Not glamorous. Not royal. A wellness retreat atmosphere. Soft voices. Teacups. The kind of place where people let their guard down because they assume discretion is part of the culture. That's where Doria reportedly spoke. Not dramatically, not angrily, but with something far more dangerous: tired honesty. Now, let's be very clear. What follows are allegations, rumors, and accounts that remain unverified. No official confirmation exists. No recordings have been publicly released. But the consistency of the whispers, the timing, and the reactions they triggered are what make this story impossible to ignore. According to multiple sources who claim to have heard second-hand accounts of the conversation, Doria did not launch into a confession. She didn't say, "Here's the truth." She didn't announce anything shocking outright. She sighed. And sometimes, a sigh tells you more than a scream. She allegedly spoke about pressure, about expectations, about decisions made quickly that became impossible to undo, about how things went further than they were supposed to. Let that line sit for a moment. Things went further than they were supposed to. What does that even mean? Was she talking about media attention, royal scrutiny, family estrangement, or something else entirely? Those who claim to have heard about the conversation say Doria expressed regret, not anger. Regret is important. Anger accuses. Regret admits weight. She reportedly said something that has since become the most repeated phrase in private circles. "I told her it would catch up." Who is her? Everyone assumes Meghan. And catch up how? This is where speculation explodes. Because once that phrase leaked, once aides, associates, and industry insiders started repeating it, panic followed. Not public panic. Private panic. The kind that happens behind locked doors and encrypted phones. Meghan's camp, according to insiders, immediately went into containment mode. Calls were made. Meetings were scheduled. Lawyers were consulted. Not to sue anyone, yet, but to assess damage. Why would a vague conversation require that level of response? Because context matters. Doria isn't just Meghan's mother. She is a witness to nearly every pivotal moment in Meghan's adult life. She was present before the fame, during the royal entry, during the pregnancies, during the exit, during the reinvention. If anyone knows where the story bends, it's her. And that's why her silence always mattered. Royal watchers have long noted that while Meghan spoke often, in interviews, documentaries, podcasts, Doria almost never did. She appeared visually, but not verbally. A smile here, a nod there. Never a contradiction, never an addition. It was as if her role was to confirm presence without providing detail. Why? Some believe it was strategic. Others believe it was protective. And a growing number believe it was contractual. Non-disclosure agreements are common in high-profile families, especially when media deals, branding, and legal considerations are involved. But NDAs have limits. They expire. They crack. They don't protect against emotional exhaustion. And exhaustion changes people. Now, consider the timing. This alleged conversation didn't happen during peak royal drama. It didn't happen when Meghan and Harry were dominating headlines daily. It didn't happen during the Netflix rollout or the memoir launch. It happened later, after the noise died down, after the contracts were signed, after the public sympathy began to wane, after scrutiny shifted from the royal family to Meghan herself. Why does that matter? Because when attention flips, accountability follows. And Doria, according to those who know her, is not someone who enjoys prolonged tension. She values balance, stability, control. The kind of control that comes from knowing where the boundaries are. But what happens when the boundaries blur? What happens when private decisions turn into public contradictions? What happens when children, real, symbolic, or otherwise, become the center of global speculation? That pressure doesn't just land on Meghan. It radiates outward. It touches everyone connected to her, including the woman who raised her. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Multiple commentators have noted that while Meghan frequently references motherhood, protection, and maternal fear, Doria's public behavior has remained oddly neutral. No public outbursts. No defensive statements. No visible urgency. Almost as if she knew something the rest of US didn't. Or almost as if she was waiting. Waiting for what? For the story to stabilize? For the truth to become irrelevant? For time to erase the questions? But time didn't erase them. It sharpened them. Online analysts began pointing out inconsistencies, not conclusions, but patterns. Timelines that shifted, details that changed, language that softened over time. And as the internet does what it always does, speculation grew louder. That speculation didn't stay online. It reached Montecito. It reached legal teams. It reached Doria. And that's when silence stopped being sustainable. According to one insider, Doria felt increasingly uncomfortable with how often she was being referenced indirectly, as a witness who would never speak, as a human exclamation point validating every claim by her absence of contradiction. That's a heavy burden. Imagine being treated as confirmation simply because you don't deny something. Silence becomes endorsement, and endorsement becomes responsibility. So when Doria allegedly spoke at that retreat, it wasn't rebellion. It was release. She didn't name names. She didn't outline details. But she confirmed one devastating idea, that the public version of events was not the full version. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Because once that door cracks open, everything behind it becomes suspect. What decisions were made quietly? What compromises were justified temporarily? What truths were postponed just until later? And most importantly, who knew? Because if Doria knew, then others knew too. And if others knew, then silence wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. Now, here's where the tension spikes. Word of Doria's comments didn't leak because someone wanted money. It leaked because someone wanted distance. According to sources, the person who heard the conversation felt uncomfortable, not scandal-hungry, but unsettled. They told one person. That person told another. And suddenly, a chain reaction began. Meghan, reportedly, learned about the conversation within hours. And that's when things shifted. Her response wasn't disbelief. It wasn't denial. It was fear. Fear doesn't come from falsehoods. Fear comes from exposure. And this is where the story tightens. Because the question is no longer, what did Doria say? The real question is, what does Doria know that Meghan believed would never leave the family? And why does Meghan believe that if Doria talks openly, everything collapses? Because whatever the truth is, it doesn't just challenge a narrative. It challenges credibility. It challenges trust. And it challenges the one thing Meghan has guarded more fiercely than anything else: control. Control of the story. Control of perception. Control of timing. And control, once lost, is nearly impossible to regain. So as we move forward, remember this. Doria didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She didn't expose. She confirmed doubt. And in a story built on certainty, doubt is lethal. But here's the twist. According to insiders, Doria didn't just speak once. She spoke again. And the second time, she said something that directly contradicted years of public messaging. Something so specific that it triggered legal alarms within hours. And that's when Meghan realized this wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a countdown. Because if Doria is willing to speak, even carefully, then the dam isn't just cracking. It's about to break. And once it does, the questions won't stop at Meghan. They'll move to Harry, to the palace, to the media, and to every moment we thought we understood. But what exactly did Doria say the second time? And who was listening then? Because the answer to that question is what turned a private conversation into a full-scale crisis. And that is where this story truly escalates. Have you ever watched someone walk into a room pregnant and walk out looking like they weren't? Now, that may sound ridiculous, maybe even offensive, but that's exactly the kind of bizarre, unsettling question that's been whispered since Meghan Markle's pregnancy announcements. And it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's a pattern. A visual anomaly that's been dissected frame by frame by royal watchers, video editors, maternity experts, and concerned citizens alike. And whether you believe Meghan was truly pregnant or not, the footage doesn't lie. Her baby bump, at times, seemed to change size, shape, and placement within the same day, sometimes within the same hour. And now, in light of Doria's quiet leak, those strange images aren't just curious. They're suspicious. So let's rewind. Let's start with the footage that changed everything. The year is 2019. Meghan is glowing, or so we're told. She steps out in a figure-hugging dress, clutching her belly with the same protective gesture seen in nearly every public appearance during her pregnancy with Archie. But then it happens. She sits down on a stage chair, and the bump folds. Yes, folds. In slow motion, viewed from multiple angles, it looks like a deflated balloon crumpling under pressure. It's the now infamous collapsing belly moment. Caught on camera, looped endlessly on YouTube, and slowed down by digital sleuths who couldn't believe their eyes. At first, it was dismissed. It's just fabric bunching. She was wearing a dress with layers. But then it kept happening. The same bump that collapsed in one moment appeared bulbous and high in another, then round and low later that afternoon. Meghan's bump seemed to move, inflate, and shift, as if it were artificial. Let that settle in. An artificial bump? A prosthetic? That's the kind of claim people don't make lightly. But the inconsistencies forced people to at least ask the question, could Meghan Markle have worn a moon bump? And if so, why? That question led to a tidal wave of photos, videos, and side-by-side comparisons that flooded the internet. Twitter threads, Reddit forums, Tumblr breakdowns. Entire YouTube documentaries cropped up analyzing her bump's behavior compared to other royal pregnancies, most notably Kate Middleton's. Let's break that comparison down. Kate's pregnancies followed the royal script. Hospital appearances, medical disclosures, timed photos, public transparency. Each bump grew gradually, consistently. The media captured her at every stage, and it always aligned with the official timeline. But Meghan? No hospital photo ops. No attending physician on record. No verified due date confirmations. Just private clinics. Hand-selected photos. And a bump that seemed unreliable. In one clip, she bends forward easily, too easily. Medical professionals commented that, in the late stages of pregnancy, such mobility would be near impossible due to abdominal pressure and weight. But Meghan? She crouched in heels, twirled in tight dresses, danced with a fluidity that raised eyebrows. Was she just incredibly fit? Or was something else going on? And then came the real kicker. At a royal event in January, Meghan was seen wearing a tight purple dress. Photos captured that day showed a large, high-riding bump, protruding prominently. But just 48 hours later, at a charity event, she wore a cream coat, and the bump had shifted. It was noticeably smaller, lower, and shaped differently. 2 days. Same pregnancy stage. 2 completely different silhouettes. Medical experts weighed in. Some tried to explain it away, different angles, different lighting. But others weren't so sure. A maternity nurse from the UK posted anonymously on a parenting forum, I've attended over 300 births. Bumps don't move like that, especially not in late 3rd trimester. And when she was asked why she remained anonymous, her answer was chilling. Because the palace watches everything. But it wasn't just the size changes. It was the bouncing. In one clip, Meghan is walking outdoors. The bump moves, visibly, with a bounce. Not her body, just the bump, as if something under the dress was loose. Independent of her stomach. Again, the explanation? It was windy. But the footage tells a different story. The bump wobbled, shifted, slid, and the internet exploded. Moon bump began trending. Thousands began Googling prosthetic pregnancy bellies and found models eerily similar to Meghan's silhouette. Some had Velcro attachments. Others had silicone molds, all designed to simulate a real baby bump, from the rounded front, to the firmness, to the way clothing hangs over it. And suddenly, people asked, if an actress needed to fake a pregnancy for a role, wouldn't she have access to the best? Meghan was an actress, after all. She knew costume designers. She understood camera angles. She was no stranger to staging a scene. And let's not forget, this was a woman who told Oprah she didn't understand the royal protocol, yet coordinated press moments with precision. A woman who claimed not to Google Harry, yet flawlessly mimicked Diana's body language. So again, we ask, was it just wardrobe choices? Or was this a performance? The royal family, for their part, said nothing. No clarifications. No statements. No denials. They remained silent. And that silence only made things worse. Because when people asked about medical documentation, there was none. When asked about hospital visits, no photos. When asked about delivery rooms, no confirmation of who was there. In fact, the physician listed on Archie's birth certificate was a different doctor than the one used by every other royal baby in modern history. Why? Security? Privacy? Or secrecy? Even the birth announcement came late. Archie was born in the early hours of the morning, but the palace waited nearly 8 hours to make the announcement. And when the press showed up for the first public appearance, the baby wasn't visible. Just a blanket. No face. No movement. Was it a swaddled baby? Or a stand-in? And here's where it gets even stranger. Meghan and Harry later admitted they misled the press about when Meghan went into labor. They claimed it was to protect their privacy. But why would you lie about labor? What would need to be hidden so urgently that time itself had to be manipulated? And then came Lillibet. This time, no bump at all. No confirmation of pregnancy milestones. No photos of Meghan during the late stages. Just a sudden announcement that Lillibet Diana had been born in California, with no public record of medical personnel, no hospital name, and no footage of Meghan visibly pregnant at the time. Now, if you were burned by media scrutiny during the first pregnancy, maybe you'd go ultra-private the second time. That's what defenders say. But critics argue the second pregnancy was even more invisible than the first. And that silence, now compounded with Doria's loose lips, feels less like privacy and more like evasion. Let's not forget the contradiction Meghan herself created during her bombshell Oprah interview. She told the world that she and Harry had a private wedding days before their official one. That was a lie. The Archbishop of Canterbury later confirmed it was not a legal ceremony, just a private exchange of vows. But Meghan said it on international television, with conviction. If she was willing to bend the truth about something as sacred as her wedding, then what else? If she could fake one milestone for optics, is it possible she faked another? And again, this isn't just idle speculation anymore. Not since Doria, her own mother, reportedly told a friend, it wasn't supposed to go this far. What wasn't? What was supposed to stop? The pregnancies? The storyline? The performance? And who orchestrated it? Some believe Harry was in on it. Others think he was manipulated, swept up in the illusion, or maybe even lied to. But either way, the disappearing bumps created a permanent scar in the public's perception. They were supposed to generate excitement, joy, celebration. Instead, they left behind questions, doubt, unease. A global audience felt like something wasn't quite right. And when people asked for clarity, they got carefully crafted PR statements. Not truth. Because here's the hard truth. Pregnancies don't deflate on camera. Bumps don't bounce like rubber. And royal births don't happen without records. Unless there's something being hidden. Which brings us back to now. Doria has broken the first rule. She's acknowledged, however subtly, that something wasn't right. And if Meghan's own mother is no longer keeping the full story locked down, then the next question becomes, what's the real story behind those disappearing bumps? And more terrifyingly, if Meghan wasn't pregnant, then where did Archie and Lilibet actually come from? Adoption? Surrogacy? Or something no one has dared to say aloud yet? Because the next chapter takes us straight into that forbidden territory. And it all begins with a christening that may never have actually happened. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a royal child christened in private, with no photos, no clergy confirmation, no official guest list, and no witnesses outside the family? Because if you're thinking, well, that doesn't sound very royal at all, you'd be right. Because that's precisely what happened, or didn't happen, with Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and later, with Lillibet Diana. The royal christening. A sacred event. A rite of passage. A moment of tradition going back centuries. And yet, for Meghan and Harry's children, it played out more like a ghost story than a celebration. Now here's the real question. What if the christening didn't happen at all? What if the event the world was told occurred never truly did? And if that's the case, why lie? Let's break it down. We begin with Archie. The announcement of his christening was already strange. The date, July 6, 2019. The location, the private chapel at Windsor Castle. But something was missing. A lot was missing. First, the guest list. Royal christenings are typically attended by senior royals, godparents, and selected members of the press. It's a moment the monarchy shares with the public, a blending of duty and family, a chance to demonstrate continuity. But Archie's christening? No press, no photographers, no live footage, no video, no photo call before or after, just a single photo, later released by Harry and Meghan's own media team. And even that image raised eyebrows. In it, Archie is swaddled in the traditional royal christening gown, a replica of the one used since Queen Victoria's era. The adults surround him in an awkward, overly staged formation. The lighting is harsh. The shadows odd. But the baby? Frozen. Eyes closed. Limp. No expression. No movement. Some claim the baby looked like a doll. Others noticed Meghan and Harry weren't holding him naturally. They seemed stiff, like posing for a fashion shoot, not a family celebration. But the most controversial detail? Two key royals were missing. Prince William and Kate Middleton. Yes, the future king and queen consort skipped the christening of their nephew. Now, the official explanation? Prior commitments. But come on, really? They'd attended every other royal christening, even those for more distant cousins. So why skip this one? And more than that, why wasn't the Archbishop of Canterbury present? The man who baptized Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis wasn't even in the same room. Instead, a nameless clergyman reportedly performed the ceremony. No name, no face, no confirmation. Just trust us. And then there's the guest list. Or rather, the lack of one. Harry and Meghan refused to release the names of Archie's godparents, a total break from royal tradition. They claimed it was to protect their privacy. But why would adult godparents need secrecy? Especially when godparents of royal babies are typically public figures, noblemen, politicians, close family friends. Unless naming them would open the door to more questions. About relationships, about loyalty, about authenticity. Because if the baby wasn't real or wasn't present, those details mattered. And then came the second wave of doubt. A leaked email, allegedly from one of Meghan's former aides, dated 3 weeks before the christening. It included a draft invitation. But here's the twist. It referenced a completely different date than the one publicly announced. A date no media outlet had ever reported. A venue that wasn't Windsor Chapel. In fact, the email listed a private estate in Oxfordshire as the location. And most damning of all, the email copy showed a peculiar detail in the RSVP section. Baby will be represented. Wait, represented? What does that mean? Was the child not expected to be physically present? Was a stand-in arranged? A stunt double for a baby? Who uses that kind of phrasing for a christening? The palace never responded to questions about the email, despite multiple press requests. It was buried, forgotten, swept under the rug. Until now. Because with Doria Ragland's recent leak, that little phrase takes on a whole new meaning. Let's jump to Lillibet. Her christening was even more elusive. According to a brief, almost careless press release in 2023, Lillibet Diana was christened by the Archbishop of Los Angeles at Meghan and Harry's Montecito home. No media, no confirmation from the Archbishop, no attendance list, no godparent names, and oddly, no photographs of the actual event. Instead, one grainy photo of Lillibet was released months later, seemingly taken at a garden party. No clear signs it was from a christening at all. Even the location seemed improvised. A private chapel area, inside their $14 million mansion. No visuals, no priest confirmation, no baptismal font, just trust. Again, even more confusing, Buckingham Palace refused to list her title, princess, for months, claiming no formal request had been made. But after the christening announcement, they suddenly updated her name to Princess Lillibet of Sussex. Why the sudden change? Because the christening allegedly confirmed her royal status. But how can a private, undocumented event in California, outside of the Church of England, officially recognize a royal title? It shouldn't, and yet it did. So was that the plan? Was the entire ceremony staged simply to gain legal justification for a title? And if so, was there even a real baby involved? Let's go deeper. Multiple royal aides have spoken, anonymously, of course, about their confusion during these milestones. One former Windsor staff member said, "We were never told where or when the christening was happening. Usually, we're briefed weeks in advance, security, logistics, ceremony protocols. This time, nothing." Another said, "It was like they wanted it to look official without making it official." And that's the recurring theme with Meghan and Harry's parenting story. Everything feels curated, stylized, designed to resemble tradition, but without actual tradition. Dresses, but no processions. Photos, but no events. Announcements, but no confirmations. A christening, with no child? Sound crazy? Then explain why even King Charles hasn't publicly spoken about attending either ceremony. Not once. No anecdotes. No, I was so proud. Or it was a lovely family moment. Just silence. And royal silence speaks volumes. Because they always play the long game. Let Meghan tell her story. Let the world embrace the fantasy. But the moment the truth becomes undeniable, the palace retreats behind protocol. We were never officially involved. We have no record. We followed what was presented to us. It's the perfect defense. Unless someone from the inside decides to talk. And that's exactly what Doria has started doing. Insiders claim that Doria, during a wellness conversation that quickly turned confidential, described Lillibet's christening as an awkward afternoon. A strange phrase, don't you think? When asked why, she reportedly replied, "There was nothing sacred about it. It was for paperwork." Let that sink in. For paperwork. Not family. Not faith. Not tradition. Just legal documentation. Was Lillibet ever held over a baptismal font? Was holy water even used? Did a priest actually perform the ritual? Or was it all staged to secure the princess title before the window closed? Because once Charles became king, the title became an option under royal rules, but only if the child existed. So was the christening the proof they needed? Or was it just a strategic performance? One royal insider reportedly said it was a naming day, not a christening, but they knew that wouldn't get them the title. So they called it what they needed to. And the press? Most of them went along with it. Because questioning it? That's dangerous. You get labeled cruel, delusional, or worse, racist. But when the smoke starts to lift, and you realize the fire was real all along, you can't unsee what you've seen. So here's the cliffhanger. Doria wasn't the only one at the christening. There was someone else. A staff member. Hired help. They've stayed quiet until now. And what they claim to have seen might just destroy the entire charade. Because if the baby wasn't real that day, then what does that make Meghan? What does that make Harry? And what does that mean for the royal bloodline? What if the only thing standing between a fairy tale and a full-blown fraud was a single piece of paper? You see, a birth certificate is supposed to be boring. A formality. A document. A record that simply says, yes, this child exists. This child was born. These are the parents. But in the case of Archie and Lilibet, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's two children, those boring documents are anything but. In fact, they may be the most suspicious part of the entire story. Because when you look closely, and we mean really closely, at those birth certificates, questions arise. Not little typos. Not minor clerical errors. We're talking red flags, blaring inconsistencies, silent edits, and what some insiders now claim was a panicked attempt to retroactively stitch together a story that was already unraveling behind the scenes. So let's start with the obvious. Why did Meghan Markle remove her own name from Archie's birth certificate? Yes, you read that correctly. And no, the media never gave you the full story. Let's dig in. On May 6, 2019, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was allegedly born at Portland Hospital in London, a private facility popular with the rich and famous. A few days later, a birth certificate was filed. It listed the baby's full name. His father, His Royal Highness Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex. And his mother? Rachel Meghan Markle. Sounds about right. But then, something changed. Fast forward to June 2019. Just a month later, and the birth certificate was quietly updated. Meghan's full name was scrubbed. Her identity was reduced to a title only. Instead of Rachel Meghan Markle, the form now read, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. No first name, no surname, just a role. Now pause. Ask yourself something. Why would a new mother, a woman who had fought tooth and nail to protect her image, her identity, her name, allow her own legal name to be erased from her child's birth certificate? Seriously. Why? The official line? A spokesperson for Meghan and Harry later said it was the palace's doing. A clerical decision, they claimed, not something Meghan requested. But that explanation crumbles fast. Why? Because no one else in royal history has had their name removed from their child's birth certificate. Not Diana, not Kate, not Camilla, not even Sophie Wessex. Even Diana, who famously hated royal protocol, had Diana Frances Spencer listed as her legal name on William and Harry's birth records. So why would Meghan, A woman who built her brand on independence and identity, allow her name to be erased. And why did the palace deny involvement? Because they did. In a rare move, Buckingham Palace released a statement implying that the Sussexes themselves initiated the change. Now we have two conflicting stories. Meghan says the palace did it. The palace says Meghan did. So who's lying? And more importantly, what are they trying to hide? Let's talk legal implications. Birth certificates aren't just keepsakes. They're legal documents. They're used for passports, citizenship, succession rights, inheritance, and yes, even royal lineage. Removing a name or altering one isn't trivial. It's logged. It's tracked. It has to be justified. And in this case, the justification is murky at best. Some royal commentators speculated the change was made to emphasize Meghan's title, to ensure the formality of Her Royal Highness was preserved. But here's the catch. Meghan and Harry quit royal duties months later. So why fight to emphasize a title you were about to abandon? Unless the title was doing more than just symbolizing status. Unless it was being used to mask something underneath. Because a title can't be verified in the same way a legal name can. A title doesn't carry the same burden of documentation. It's ceremonial, symbolic. But Rachel Meghan Markle? That's traceable. That's personal. That can be cross-checked with hospital records, insurance forms, medical data. And if Meghan's name isn't on the birth certificate as a legal mother, then whose name is? Was the name removed to obscure inconsistencies? Or to align with surrogate paperwork? Yes, we're going there. Let's entertain a theory. If a surrogate was used, and Meghan wasn't the biological or birth mother, her name would not legally appear on a birth certificate unless steps were taken to formalize custody. It's standard surrogacy law in many countries. Could the name change have been part of that process? A rushed edit to ensure no one questioned the document's origin? Could it have been a botched legal move that accidentally created more suspicion than it solved? Because here's what we now know. According to insiders close to Doria Ragland, the decision to amend the birth certificate was not discussed with her. That's odd. Doria was present during the birth, allegedly. She was the only family member allowed near Meghan during those critical days. And yet, she didn't know about the change. When asked about it later, she reportedly responded with a now infamous phrase. I thought we agreed to keep it as it was. Agreed? Who was she speaking to? And what was she referring to? Because that sentence implies that the birth certificate, or the information on it, was a topic of debate long before the child even arrived. A planned edit? A pre-discussed agreement? Or a last-minute scramble? Whatever it wasn't clean. And Lillibet's certificate didn't help matters. Let's go there next. When Lillibet Diana was born in June 2021, Meghan and Harry released a press statement announcing her arrival in California. But just like Archie, questions began immediately. First, the hospital. Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Private. Secure. But also, no confirmation from the facility itself. No photos. No security footage. No attending physician statement. Just silence. Then came the certificate. It listed her father as the Duke of Sussex. And her mother? This time, Rachel Meghan Markle. Wait, what? Now Meghan is using her full name again? After going through all that trouble to remove it from Archie's? That makes no sense. Unless. And this is where it gets interesting. The circumstances of the two births were fundamentally different. Maybe in one, Meghan needed to obscure her name. And in the other, she didn't. Why? Some believe Archie's birth involved a surrogate in the UK. And Lillibet's? A different process in California, where Meghan could more easily control the narrative. In California, the laws are different. Parents can be listed however they choose, regardless of biological connection. So long as proper documentation is filed. Could that be why Meghan reverted back to her full name? Was it a legal maneuver? A calculated shift? Or worse, an attempt to correct what had gone wrong in the first birth certificate scandal? And now, enter the twist. A former staff member from Meghan's legal team in London, now retired and speaking under anonymity, allegedly revealed a startling comment. They said, there was pressure to align all documentation before the Netflix deal. Why? Because contracts involving children in media, especially minors in documentaries, require proof of parenthood, legal documentation, birth certificates, passports, which brings us back to that crucial document. If Archie and Lilibet were going to appear in a global streaming documentary, the Sussexes would need to prove they had full legal rights to portray them. Hence, the birth certificates suddenly became central, and any inconsistencies would have to be cleaned up, quietly, silently, maybe even retroactively. Because remember, the first version of Archie's birth certificate wasn't a scandal until someone noticed it had been edited. And those edits raised the question that refuses to die. Was Meghan Markle ever truly pregnant? Because if she wasn't, then the paperwork matters more than ever. And the one thing Meghan and Harry never expected was that someone from their own camp, someone who helped file that paperwork, would one day question it. That person is about to speak, and what they claim to know is enough to shatter the entire narrative. Have you ever watched someone tell a story so many times they forget which version they're supposed to stick to? Because that's what started happening with Prince Harry. And once you notice it, once you really pay attention, you can't unsee it. This chapter isn't about conspiracy theories. It's about words, about pauses, about moments when a man trained since birth to stay on message suddenly didn't. Moments when Harry went off script. And every time he did, the story around Archie and Lilibet didn't just wobble, it cracked. So let's start with the simplest question of all. Why does Prince Harry, a father of two, so often sound like someone describing children he barely knows? Think back to the interviews. Not the polished ones with written talking points. Not the Netflix confessionals with soft lighting and emotional music. The unscripted moments. The offhand comments. The casual Q&As. That's where the problems begin. In one interview, Harry is asked a harmless question. What's your favorite thing about being a dad? Most parents answer instantly. Sleep deprivation. Laughter. First steps. First words. The chaos. The joy. Harry pauses. Not a thoughtful pause. An empty one. He smiles. Shifts in his seat. Then says something vague. They change all the time. That's it. No anecdote. No memory. No specificity. Just filler. And that alone wouldn't mean much if it didn't keep happening. In another interview, Harry is asked about Archie's milestones. What's he like now? The host asks. Harry responds, he's, growing. Growing? What child isn't? He doesn't mention toys, or friends, or tantrums, or words. Just growth. Then comes the moment that made royal watchers freeze. Harry is speaking at a mental health event. A veteran asks him directly, how did becoming a father change you? Harry starts confidently, talks about generational trauma, healing, protecting children. Then the veteran follows up. What was it like holding your son for the first time? And Harry stops, completely. His face changes. He laughs nervously. Then he deflects. Well, it was emotional. Obviously. Again, no detail. No sensory memory. No, he was so small. Or, I was terrified. Or he grabbed my finger. Nothing. Just a generic statement that could apply to any new father, or to someone who had rehearsed the idea of fatherhood without experiencing it. Now ask yourself, is that normal? Or is that what happens when someone is speaking from concept, not memory? It gets worse. During the promotion of his memoir, Harry told multiple stories about Archie, and the timelines didn't match. In one version, Archie is already talking fluently at an age where he shouldn't be. In another, Harry claims Archie said his first word months later. In one interview, Harry says Archie loves being outdoors and riding bikes. In another, he claims Archie is still too young for outdoor activities. Which is it? Because when parents talk about their children, the details flow naturally, even if they're exhausted, even if they're private. But Harry's details feel borrowed, like someone repeating bullet points they were given, and sometimes, like someone forgetting which bullet point comes next. Now let's talk about the infamous bath time comment. Harry once claimed that bathing Archie was a deeply therapeutic experience, that it grounded him and helped him process trauma. A sweet sentiment. Until he told the same story again, differently. This time, he described bath time as chaotic, loud, and stressful, something Meghan mostly handled. So which one is true? The calming ritual? Or the overwhelming chore? Because both can't be true in the same way. Unless the story itself is flexible. Unless it's not anchored in reality, but in narrative. And then there's Lillibet. Harry speaks about her even less. In fact, when asked directly about Lillibet during a public appearance, Harry once referred to her as the little one. Not by name, not even by nickname, just the little one. Parents usually jump at the chance to say their child's name. Names carry emotion, identity, connection. So why does Harry avoid saying hers? Some defenders say he's protecting privacy. But then why talk about Archie at all? Why mention milestones publicly? Why include them in documentaries? Why reference them in lawsuits? Privacy doesn't explain inconsistency. It explains silence. And Harry isn't silent. He's inconsistent. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. According to one former Sussex aide, Harry often appeared confused during internal discussions about scheduling that involved the children. What time does Archie usually nap? Someone once asked. Harry reportedly looked to Meghan before answering. Another time, a staff member asked if Lillibet had any food allergies. Harry didn't know. These may seem like small details, but parents know these things, especially parents who claim their entire life revolves around protecting their children. And according to insiders, these moments weren't rare. They were frequent, enough to make staff uncomfortable, enough to raise quiet questions, enough for one aide to allegedly say. Sometimes it felt like he was being briefed on his own family. Briefed. Let that word sit. Now, to be fair, Harry has openly admitted to struggling with mental health, trauma, and memory. Some argue that his inconsistencies stem from stress. But stress doesn't erase experience. It doesn't erase emotional memory. It doesn't make you forget what it felt like to hold your newborn. Unless you never did. And that's the thought no one wants to say out loud. Then there's the Oprah interview. A moment meant to solidify their story. Harry spoke emotionally about protecting his family. But when Oprah asked a simple follow-up, "What's your daily routine like with the kids?" Harry let Meghan answer. She spoke confidently. He nodded along. He didn't add anything. Not one personal detail. Almost like he was learning the routine as she described it. And Oprah noticed. She leaned in, asked another question directly to Harry. "What do they love to do?" Harry smiled. They love being outside. Again, generic, safe, unverifiable. Now let's connect this to Doria. According to insiders, Doria once commented, privately, that Harry believed what he was told. That phrase matters. Believed what he was told. Not knew. Not experienced. Believed. Which suggests that Harry may not have been the architect of whatever arrangement existed. He may have been a participant. Or worse, a bystander. A man so desperate for family, for legacy, for healing his childhood wounds, that he accepted a version of reality handed to him by someone he trusted completely. Meghan. And if that's true, then Harry's slip UPS aren't malicious. They're accidental. They're the result of someone repeating a story they didn't fully live. Which makes them all the more revealing. Now here's the moment that reportedly sent shockwaves through the inner circle. During a private speaking engagement, Harry was asked, off microphone, whether Archie had Harry's red hair. Harry laughed, then said, "We'll see. We'll see. That's not how genetics work. By toddler age, hair color is visible. You don't wait and see. Unless the child isn't physically present. Unless you haven't seen them up close. Unless the image you have of them is mediated. Through photos. Through screens. Through descriptions." And that comment, according to those who heard it, was quickly smoothed over by staff. But the damage was done. Because the pattern was undeniable now. Harry wasn't lying convincingly. He wasn't even lying consistently. He was reacting, improvising. And improvisation always fails under pressure. So here's the question we have to ask before moving on. If Meghan controlled the narrative, if Doria knew the truth, and if Harry was the weakest link, then what happens when the truth reaches him in a way he can't ignore? What happens when he realizes that the story he's been defending might not be the full story? Because according to sources close to the couple, that moment is coming. And when it does, Harry won't be protecting anyone. He'll be asking questions. And once he starts asking, there's no going back. Because the next chapter takes us into the one place Meghan worked hardest to control. The medical records, the clinics, the doctors, and the protocols that were never followed. What happens when someone builds a wall so high, not even the royal family can see over it? That's exactly what Meghan Markle did during her pregnancies. Or at least, what she claimed were her pregnancies. Because when you peel back the layers of secrecy, contradiction, and oddly choreographed decisions surrounding Meghan's maternity journey, both with Archie and Lilibet, the wall starts to crumble. And what's left behind? Not a proud royal mother, but a carefully constructed illusion. So let's ask the question everyone's been too afraid to ask out loud. What exactly was Meghan hiding during those 9 months? And why did she rewrite the rules for herself? Let's begin with the royal protocol. Royal pregnancies, especially for those in direct succession lines, are traditionally transparent as possible under layers of formality and security. Let's take Kate Middleton, for example. With all 3 of her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, there were clearly outlined procedures. The public was informed of her due dates, her hospital admissions, her attending doctors, and even the moment she left the hospital. Kate stood, often hours after giving birth, in front of global cameras. Pale, tired, real, holding her baby on the steps of the Lindo wing, a long-standing tradition. Was it grueling? Yes, but it was proof. Proof that the baby was real, that the birth happened where they said it did, that the monarchy, despite all its secrets, would honor tradition. But Meghan? Meghan flipped the entire script. No hospital steps, no public confirmation of labor, no real-time press updates, no photographic evidence of an actual birth. Instead, we got shadows, announcements after the fact, conflicting reports, contradictory timelines, and more security than the Prime Minister during wartime, all under the umbrella of a new phrase Meghan introduced to royal vocabulary. Private pregnancy protocol. What did that actually mean? Let's take a closer look. From the moment Meghan's pregnancy was announced, October 2018, during the couple's tour in Australia, something felt off. The timing was suspicious. She was said to be 12 weeks along, but appeared to show no signs. Within 2 weeks, she suddenly had a prominent bump. Then, just as quickly, it shifted in shape and size. Fine. Everyone's body is different, right? But that's where Meghan's privacy obsession kicked in. She reportedly refused to allow palace doctors to monitor her. Yes, you heard that correctly. Royal insiders have claimed that Meghan rejected the use of the Queen's own physicians, the same team that had overseen generations of royal births. Instead, she insisted on using a private team. Names never released. Credentials never verified. A former palace aide, speaking under anonymity, said this. No one knew who her doctors were. She wouldn't even allow them to be on the royal security clearance list. That had never happened before. Let that sink in. The Duchess of Sussex, married into one of the most scrutinized institutions in the world, was undergoing a royal pregnancy, funded by taxpayers, with zero accountability. That wasn't privacy. That was lockdown. And it only gets weirder. When her due date approached in April 2019, the media stationed themselves outside Portland Hospital, the rumored site of Meghan's delivery. But no one saw her arrive. No security detail. No convoy. No movement at all. Then came the press announcement. The Duchess went into labor in the early hours of the morning. Everyone waited, prepared. Then came another update. The Duchess and baby are doing well. Wait, what? Labor and birth within hours? And now they were home. Where were the photos? Where was the confirmation? But there were none. In fact, the public didn't see the couple or the baby until 2 full days later. And when they did appear, they were inside Windsor Castle, far from the hospital, in a tightly choreographed press moment that allowed only one camera, one photographer, and 0 questions. It was like a scene from a period drama, stiff, silent, awkward. And most glaring of all, the baby's face wasn't visible, not even a little, wrapped tightly, unmoving, not even a twitch. Many speculated, was that even a real baby in her arms? Because Meghan didn't hold him like a mother. She posed with him like a prop. And the royal family? They were absent. No Queen, no Prince Charles, no William, no Kate, just Doria, Meghan's mother, and Harry, and a baby the world wasn't allowed to see. Then came the story that chilled insiders. According to a former palace staffer, Meghan had allegedly requested no nurses from the NHS, the National Health Service, be allowed near her delivery room. Only private staff, all of whom had signed NDAs. Again, let that settle. Even Diana didn't do that. Even Fergie didn't do that. Even Princess Anne didn't do that. But Meghan? She didn't want anyone near her who wasn't handpicked, controlled, silenced. And the Queen? Reportedly furious. It was the first real rift, the beginning of what would later explode into Megxit. Because Meghan wasn't just demanding privacy. She was dismantling protocol. And no one understood why. Now let's shift to Lillibet. Because if you thought the first pregnancy was mysterious, the second was pure vapor. There were no public appearances during Meghan's alleged third trimester. No live bump footage. No sightings at all, not even blurry paparazzi images. She claimed she was nesting, but even nesting women go outside. Instead, the announcement came post-birth. A press release, just like last time. And once again, no photo, no hospital records, no doctor's confirmation, just a name. Lillibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor was born in California, and we were expected to believe it. But the address listed for the couple at the time, their Montecito estate, was not linked to any known maternity center. Was Meghan giving birth at home? With what medical team? With what equipment? And if so, why wasn't that confirmed? You see, privacy is one thing. But Meghan's pregnancy protocol wasn't about privacy. It was about absolute control. And in controlling every detail, she raised more suspicion than any royal in modern history. Now here's the kicker. One medical professional, a maternity nurse based in Los Angeles, claimed to have been approached about working a discreet postpartum role in 2021. No baby interaction, no feeding duties, no diapering, just household ambience. What does that even mean? She turned the job down, and days later, a friend of hers saw a nearly identical job posting, but with one added detail. Must be comfortable with the idea of discretion in the absence of proof. Let that phrase echo. Discretion in the absence of proof. Proof of what? That there's a baby? That Meghan gave birth? That this entire narrative isn't manufactured? Now we come to the most damning part. A member of the Sussex's Montecito security team, who later resigned, said this. We never saw a crib delivered. We never saw formula. No car seats. No pediatricians visiting. Just people coming in for photo coordination. Photo coordination? For a newborn? Why would a baby need to be coordinated? Unless what people were seeing in glimpses, in documentaries, in filtered photos.